it just fills you with joy and the love of Jesus. Woo! I have to catch myself here. I really enjoy you guys. I love listening to you, and it's such a blessing. I hope you come up more often, and then we can persuade you to come up. And I'm sorry our stage is so small. I think we had adoration here, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
We did. We might have had this all.
Yeah, we opened the
Yeah, we need it for adoration. There's a lot of members. Yeah. All right, so it's a little different than what you remember. Udine, I really appreciate your prayer. It brought to my mind, after you prayed it, about this group over in some other country that's being persecuted right now. And you know, we really don't realize, we don't really understand what that means to be persecuted like this. But brothers and sisters, it's going on in the world today, all over the world. And we are sheltered from it. We don't understand what it is. We watch it on television, but it's not the same thing as when you're going through it. So we need to pray for our brothers and sisters, especially now, because guess what? Persecution will be coming our way.
That's right.
It will be coming our way.
Will we be ready?
Will we be ready? And that's basically what my sermon's about. Now, you know where we've been doing the prophecy seminars. Can you guys hear me okay with this? Do I need to see something like it? Good? Okay. We've been doing the prophecy seminars, and we started with the book of Daniel and Daniel's dream. Now, you know, those of you that have been here before, you know that I have a hard time sometimes coming up with things to talk about. It's very challenging sometimes for me to come up with an idea on what to talk about. And this time was about the same thing, because I'm worried about these seminars and things. So I decided to do things a little differently than I normally do. Usually I just wait till Friday, and then the idea comes, and then I write it Friday night. Well, I knew that I had to get it done beforehand this time. So I thought of an interesting way of doing it. I took my phone, and then I spun it around a few times. I opened the Bible app, and then I flipped it up and down like this, and I put my finger down, and I hit it twice so that I would get the book, the chapter, and then I looked at it and saw what it was. Now, yesterday we talked about Daniel chapter 2. Daniel chapter 2. All right, and Monday when I did this and I put my finger down, guess what the verse was that I put my finger on?
Daniel chapter 2.
Daniel chapter 3.
Wow.
Daniel chapter 3. And I thought, wow. I thought, well, whatever I come up with, God can make a sermon on it.
That's right.
And that's what he did. And before I go on, I want to put up a little thing here, because this is what we've been talking about, and this is what we discussed last night in Daniel chapter 2. Let's see if I can do this without hurting myself. It worked last night. It did. My hands are out. Harris is a little taller than I am. I'll hold the bottom down here.
Just a little.
Amen.
No, just this one. Thank you. Thank you. And last night we talked about...
Move it so we put the statue on the left of you.
Put the statue on the left of me?
Yeah, or this side.
In the middle.
Yeah,
Right
that's
there?
A little
So you can't see it at all?
No, that's how we can see it.
In the middle,
All the
okay.
way over there.
That's good, that's good.
Perfect. No, that's too far now.
There we go. All right, now we got a really...
It's too far now.
Now it's too far?
Oh my God. You good.
No.
For the camera.
Pastor, now you know what I have to deal with.
Oh, for the cat.
That's good. That's good.
All right.
Yeah.
The mic.
All right, so my sermon title is, It's a Little Warm in Here. It's a little warm in here.
Amen.
So if you know, and I'm not, well, it is a little warm in here. You know that Nebuchadnezzar, after this dream, he had this dream of this metal figure, and we talked about how the metal figure in his dream had a head of gold, and the body and arms of silver, and then down here we had brass and steel, iron, and then clay mixed with iron, and this is what Nebuchadnezzar saw. But that wasn't good enough for him, was it? So in chapter 3, Nebuchadnezzar goes and decides that this isn't good enough. He didn't want to accept this. He didn't want to accept the Word of God. And Well, let's read it in Daniel chapter 3, verse 1. Daniel chapter 3, verse 1. And it said that Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold whose height was 60 cubits. Does anybody know what 60 cubits is? 90 feet. It's 90 feet. So this thing was a tall, tall statue. And it was 9 feet wide. 6 cubits or 9 feet wide. He set it up in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. So why did the king make the statue? Why did this king make the statue?
Last forever.
He wanted his kingdom to last forever. He didn't want it to change. And his statue was all gold. All gold. They had some money. He made it because he dreamed about the great statue of the head of gold and was told that his kingdom represented that head of gold, but that the rest of the statue was made of other parts. In other words, after the head of gold, another kingdom was going to come along, and then another kingdom, and then another kingdom, and then another kingdom, and finally the Lord would return. He was trying to establish his kingdom forever and change what God had already said would happen. Verse 2, it says, And King Nebuchadnezzar sent word to gather together the satraps, the administrators, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the officials of the province to come to the dedication of the image which King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. So the satraps, anybody know what that is? Satraps? They're kind of like governors.
Officials.
There's some official, yeah, some official. So the satraps, the administrators, I don't understand why they got to repeat this every time. The satraps, the officials, and the governors, and the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, and the magistrates, and all the officials of the province gathered together for the dedication of the image of the king Nebuchadnezzar had set up, and they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then a herald cried aloud, To you it is commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages, that at the time you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the harp, the lyre, the psaltery, and the symphony, with all kinds of music, you should fall down and worship the golden image that the king Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And whosoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast immediately into the midst of a burning, fiery furnace. I find it interesting that he put consequences right after the decree. Why would he need to say that? Why wasn't his word good enough? How come he couldn't say it and his people would just follow and obey it? He had to use fear as a motivator. He was a bully, and he had the power to force his will on anyone he wanted to. Do you think he knew about the Jews and their religion? Do you think he might have been expecting some resistance? Of course he did. He had first-hand knowledge through Daniel. And where was Daniel in all of this? If we look back in Daniel chapter 2, at the very end of the chapter, after he had interpreted his dream, this is what the king said. It said, Then the king appointed Daniel to a high position and gave him many valuable gifts. He made Daniel ruler over the whole province of Babylon, as well as chief over his wise men. See, he was the main dude. At Daniel's request, the king appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to be in charge of all the affairs of the province of Babylon, while Daniel remained in the king's court. So the king was very, very familiar with Daniel. And it sounds like he even knew who Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego was. So Daniel was his right-hand man. Again, where is Daniel? It says he called all the officials to his court. Where's Daniel? I believe the king must have sent Daniel away as he knew that he would not go along with this. He had to send him away on some business, some official business, to get him out of there because he knew that Daniel would not bow down, and he knew that he would have to follow through with his word. But why do you think he made the other Jews bow down? Why do you think the other Jews, why do you think he thought the other Jews would bow down? May I suggest because he knows human nature? Or he knew human nature? He knows human character? Most people are not so firmly planted as Daniel. And I think that's why he used fear right from the start. To avoid those people who would waver in their faith. They might continue to stand if they don't know what the consequences are. So he made the consequences so harsh, he thought that no one would be able to stand, and then he would get all the people to follow him. Let's continue to read our story. Daniel 3, verse 7. It says, "So at that time when all the people heard the sounds of the horn, the flute, the harp, the lyre, and symphony with all kinds of music, all the people of the nations and languages fell down and worshipped the gold image which King Nebuchadnezzar had set up." Now I think they use music to get the people to bow down because it's kind of the universal language. People spoke different languages. They wouldn't know when to bow down if another language was spoken. In this way, everyone knew the sign to bow down. In verse 8 it says, "Therefore at that time certain Chaldeans came forward and accused the Jews. They spoke and said to the king Nebuchadnezzar, 'O king, live forever. You, O king, have made a decree that everyone who hears the sound of the horn, the flute, the harp, the lyre, and the psaltery and symphony with all kinds of music shall fall down and worship the gold image. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Now there are certain Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not paid due regard to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the gold image which you have set up.'" They sound like they're really concerned about paying homage to the king, don't they? I think there's more at play to this than just their respect for the king. Then Nebuchadnezzar, in a rage and fury, gave the command to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So they brought these men before the king. And Nebuchadnezzar spoke, saying to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the golden image which I have set up?" Now if you are ready at the time you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the harp, the lyre, and the psaltery and symphony with all kinds of music, and you fall down and worship the image which I have made, good. But if you do not worship, you shall be cast immediately into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. And who is the God who will deliver you from my hands? Now notice, the king did not follow through with his command. They didn't bow down, and he gave them another chance. The king said that if they did not bow down, they would immediately be thrown into the fire. I wonder if you recognize them and realize they were the friends of Daniel. Even though he knew the right thing to do, he couldn't get out of it now. And I think the temper got the better of him anyway. I think he would have thrown his own mother in the furnace. He seemed so angry. Could you imagine that kind of rage? Proverbs 25:28 says, "A man without self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls." Think about that. When you lose your self-control, you have no protection. Guess who's out there ready to come in and take control? The devil wants you to lose control. Then he gets to control you. Nothing good ever happens when you lose control of your temper. In verse 16 it says, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, 'O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If that is the case, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us from your hand, O king.' But if not, let it be known to you, O king, that we do not serve your gods, nor will we worship the golden image which you have set up. No matter how many times I read that verse, I always get excited about their answer. How many of us would stand up to someone like that? Especially standing in front of the ultimate earthly authority at the time. Think about it. What they said will guarantee them a one-way ticket into the fire. And you know, God had answered dreams and helped them out of eating the king's meat in earlier chapters, but we have no record of God doing some major miracle like that during their time in Babylon. They expected to die. It's easy to say something when you know the outcome. Could we say that facing those circumstances? I hope I could. We face things in our lives that we have not had to deal with before. But just like these men, can we say, we have no need to answer you in this manner. Our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us. Can we say that in our lives? In the things that aren't going to kill us or create instant death. It's no more difficult than what these three were facing. Impossible circumstances. They knew what they believed, and they were not going to compromise what they believed, even to save their own lives. Do we have that kind of resolve? Think about it. How many of us compromise when we have just a little bit of pressure on us? Maybe even no pressure at all, just out of convenience. In verse 19 it says, Then Nebuchadnezzar was full of fury, and the expression on his face changed towards Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He spoke and commanded that they heat the furnace 7 times more than it was usually heated. So he was so angry, he made it even worse for them. Although it seems that he would have caused longer suffering by actually lowering the temperature, all he really accomplished was killing his own men. In verse 20 it says, And he commanded certain mighty men of valor who were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Has the devil bound you so tight that there's no way to free yourself or to escape? Maybe he has you tied up with some addiction, drugs, alcohol, pornography. Maybe it's a food addiction. Could be jealousy. Maybe gossip or even envy. Whatever it is you are bound by and you can't seem to get free and you're heading to the furnace. There's only one who can save you from the flames. One who can use those flames. The ones that were created to destroy you. Use those flames to burn off those ropes that bind you. One who can allow you to walk in the fire that was so hot that anything that got near it was destroyed even by approaching it. In verse 21 it says, Then these men were bound in their coats, their trousers, their turbans, and the other garments, and were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Therefore, because the king's command was urgent, and the furnace exceedingly hot, that the flames of the fire killed those men who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Now, I don't like falling down, and I couldn't even imagine falling down into a fire. And can you imagine that? The flames were so hot that the men that brought them near the fire were killed. I think this may have happened for emphasis to make sure that everyone knew that the fire was real and it was destructive. No one could say maybe the fire wasn't hot enough. Now, I love the fact that God is not bound by nature or physics. He overrules everything. And it makes me think about all the small things in our own lives that we worry about, that we're concerned about. I haven't read of anybody recently being thrown into a hot, fiery furnace. But we do know we have trials and difficulties. And how do we face those trials and difficulties? Do we have it? Do we face it with the faith that Daniel had and his friends? Or do we fear? Or do we worry? Or maybe we didn't stand up at all. Maybe we're bowing down our face to the ground before the golden image. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished in verse 24, and he said, and he arose in haste and spake, saying to his counselors, did we not cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire? They answered and said to the king, true, O king. Look, he answered, I see 4 men loose walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt. And the form of the 4th is like the Son of God. Friends, always remember this. No matter what you're going through, no matter how warm or hot your situation is, no matter how impossible your circumstances may seem, Jesus is right there in the fire with you.
That's right.
Why not thank Him for protecting you? Thank Him for helping you through the trial. If you're going through something right now, thank Him for being there and walking with you through what you're going through. That's what faith is all about. It doesn't take faith to look back as God protected you and brought you through the trial. It doesn't take any faith to thank Him after that. Thank Him while you're in the middle of it, when you don't feel like it, when things are tough, when your house is falling down around you. That's when you thank Him. Thank you, Lord, for taking care of this. Thank you, Lord, for taking care of me. No matter what happens, I know I'm safe. I'm secure. That's faith. God loves that kind of faith. And God answers that kind of faith. Verse 26, it says, then Nebuchadnezzar went near the mouth of the burning fiery furnace and spoke, saying, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out and come here. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came from the midst of the fire, and the satraps, the administrators, the governors, the kings, the counselors gathered together, and they saw these men whose bodies the fire had no power. The hair on their head was not singed, nor were their garments affected, and the smell of fire was not on them.
Amen.
Not even the smell. God can bring you through a trial and make it as if nothing had happened to you. They couldn't even smell the smoke on them. If you've ever gone camping or stood near a fire, you know how the smoke permeates your clothes. It gets all over you, but God wouldn't even allow that to touch them.
Amen.
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 How amazing.
Yes.
Many of you know my story, how I lost everything at a very young age. In my 30s, I lost everything that I had. Everything. I lost my family, my possessions, everything. I had to move in with my parents, all by myself. And God brought me from that point to where I am now, and I'm exactly where I should be, and probably even beyond where I should be. God brought me through that trial. It was as if it never even happened. And He has blessed me. Verse 28, it says, Nebuchadnezzar spoke, saying, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who sent His angel and delivered His servants who trusted in Him. Even Nebuchadnezzar could realize this. And they have frustrated the king's word and yielded their bodies that they should not serve nor worship any god except their God. What a testimony. What an example. What an opportunity to witness. You know, every trial we go through is an opportunity. No matter how big or small, people are watching. People are watching to see how you're going to handle yourself through your situation. Trust in the Lord, and He can use you as an example. This is missionary work at its finest. Verse 29, it says, "Therefore I make a decree that any people, nations, or language would speak anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut in pieces, and their houses shall be made an ash heap, because there is no other God who can deliver like this." Now, in the King James Version, I think it says dung heap. So that's even worse. Now, the king seems to always go to these extremes, either one extreme or the other. But God allows us to have free will. God allows us to have free will. This king seems to want to take it away from people. I'm glad we don't live under this ruler. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. You know, this passage doesn't seem to have any future predictions like Daniel chapter 2. But I want to point out how very similar this story is to the verse in Revelation. Revelation chapter 13 verse 15 says this. It says, "He was granted power to give breath to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed." This is future. We may well have to face the same kind of trial that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had to face. Now, it may not look the same way, but it will come down to who we worship. Will it be God or some image that man has set up? Every day we compromise and put other things before God is a day we are using to weaken our resolve. These three practiced what they believed every single day. They put God first every day. It had become a habit. So when the time came, they were able to say, "We don't even have to think about how to answer you. We will not bow down."
Amen.
How will we handle the pressure of the entire world is doing one thing? We know we should do something else. If we are used to compromising our standards now, either out of fear or out of convenience, how easy will it be to compromise when the big test does come? You know, it says that everyone was at the plain of Dura. There were many other Jews there. Why weren't they standing? Why weren't they brought before the king?
One thing to fight.
Only 3. It's not a big number. There are a lot of Jews there. Today we're seeing all kinds of compromise going on. People who stood for right are now excusing. Look at what it says in Isaiah 5. It says, "Woe unto them that call evil good, and good evil, that put darkness for light, and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet, and sweet for bitter. Woe unto them that are wise in their own eyes, and prudent in their own sight. Woe unto them that are mighty to drink wine, and men of strength, and mingle strong drink, which justify the wicked for reward, and take away the righteousness of the righteous from him. Therefore, as a fire devoureth the stubble, and the flame consumeth the chaff, so the root shall be as rottenness, and their blossom shall go up as dust. Because they have cast away the law of the Lord of hosts, and despised the word of the Holy One of Israel." There's that fire we were talking about. That fire can't touch you if you have Jesus with you. The fire that destroys everything that comes near it. You won't even smell the smoke when it burns. It can't touch you. Let's ask Jesus to convert us and make our hearts like that of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that we may be able to stand in the fire when it comes. May the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, and the love of God, the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you all. I'd like to welcome back to the stage Basic as they sing. And if you feel like your relationship with Jesus is not where it should be, ask Jesus to put the desire in your heart for Him.
Amen.